I'm here with Lynell. We're going to talk about a little bit about WWE 2K20. I'd like to know what's new in this new edition of this wonderful franchise of video games.
I would say the main thing that's new is that it's developed in-house at Visual Concepts and 2K, right? So now everyone's like, well, this is in the game, and that's still in the game, and this is in the game. Yeah, but you know what? It's us doing it. It's us designing it. It's us making our tools to run all the things that you guys have known to, come and love and play with and create your characters or matches or whatever. Everything had to get redone in-house and brought to you by us. And if that meant like taking it apart, breaking it, and then fixing it again, and then tweaking it and trying to make it better, that was our thing, right? So we spent a year getting all of this stuff under our roof, right? And the thing that I will say that I'm most proud of is the new additions, like my career, a male and female, like first time ever. It's amazing, right? And you play through the story, and it's not just, the typical WWE coming of age story. It's a flashback story where you're starting off in the Hall of Fame, working your way, up from high school all the way to, the Indies into NXT and then the WWE into your Hall of Fame, right? And so it goes back in time. It goes into hell, right? Like there's, yeah. And again, these are things that we were able to do now that we have the keys to the car, right? Where we're letting our developers shine. We're letting our designers, our artists, our programmers do what they're good at. It's been hard, but at the same time, it's been so rewarding building this team from scratch and getting this game out the door for you guys to play. You'll also see, like, the other thing I'm really proud about is the originals content that we're giving you guys in DLC. It's crazy. It's crazy, right? Check out some of the entrances while you're here. Check out some of the, the gameplay, new environments. It's amazing, right? Again, it's letting our developers shine and do what they do best.
I was going to say I definitely noticed something was different. And now that you say that VC is on the reins for the first time, it makes a lot of sense because, so this is basically like a new game in that sense because, a lot of people are used to, games like these and a sports game being pretty, it's more or less the same thing each year, but I could see, just by seeing the game, it's different. Like, so what can people expect in terms of, the animations, the gameplay mechanics, and, what's different from the other years this time around?
I would say the biggest thing are the controls. Like we've heard all the feedback, and these are things that we wanted to introduce in years past, but we just couldn't, right? So when you have a developer that's been working on the game for 20 years and that system is so tight, it's really hard to change it, right? And so we had the luxury of trying to take that thing apart, and so you're like, hey, we took it apart, now we understand it, now let's try to change it and make it better, right? And so moving the reversals onto the face button sounds trivial, but it's a game changer, right? You're like, oh, it's easier. Hey, it's actually better, right? Once you get used to it. There is a learning curve. Changing it to like finishers and signatures onto like hitting a combo button like X and A or square and circle, whatever, right? Like the same thing with OMGs. Like making it to where it feels more like what people come to expect for, especially first-time users who are used to traditional fighting games. When you do things like this, you're like, oh, this makes sense, right? Breaking away something that sounds so simple, like picking up a weapon or tagging someone or climbing the ropes, we're all on the same button. So you're like, it's a dice roll on what animation you actually get. Hey, let's break that up into two different buttons now that we have one button free, right? And so it's all those things that we're taking into account now that it's ours, right? And so you'll see little things like that everywhere in the game, right? And so, like, I know a lot of, when we announced Universe Mode, everyone was like, oh, they just upped the count on all these things. These are things that we wanted to do for years. And you're like, hey, how about we up the max amount of, shows or matches, or add a mixed tag challenge back in the game, right? Like, so it's like all these things we were able to do now that we were driving.
So what's the hardest part of, like, getting these wrestlers, these athletes, like, getting their likeness just right? Like, what's the hardest part? Is it the animation, the motion capture? Well, what do you think?
I would say the hardest thing is the fact that they change so dang much, man. They change their look so often, so frequently, it's hard to keep up. But I appreciate it. They're larger-than-life characters, and they have a job to do. And we're just kind of, chasing them and riding their coattails and trying to get them to look as accurate as we can, given the time frame that we have to develop this game. And now every year we try to give you guys the biggest roster ever, right? And so it's like, yeah, it's easy to say, hey, that one guy, why don't you update him? But when you have 300 that you also need to update and make sure that you're giving the same amount of love to each one of those guys, it's really hard when you think about the numbers.
Yeah, I saw that you guys have, different versions of these athletes and different, times in their careers. And speaking of careers, I'd like to talk to you about the showcase mode, man. I think that's a very cool mode in which, we can basically just relive a couple of these athletes, highlights. So I'd like to, can you tell me about that mode, man?
Yeah, so Showcase is back again. Yeah. So last year we brought Showcase back after a huge uproar of us taking it out for 2 years in a row. It came back with a vengeance, right? We upped the quality as far as the presentation. We're bringing Daniel Bryan and having him voice over his own career, right? Crazy outfits, like you're mentioning, matches, things that people, resonate, very well with these characters. And for us, having the four horsewomen showcased in Showcase, pun intended, was, it was a no-brainer for us, right? Like the man and how, just instrumental she has been in this women's revolution, right? Where Charlotte, Becky, Sasha, having all four of them and tell their stories and showcase their matches from past to present was a huge honor for us to be a part of that evolution, right? So for me, it's amazing, right? Like, again, whoever thought that they, women would, main event WrestleMania, it happened, right? And so it's like, for us, it's like, it's a no-brainer. We have to be on, we have to be part of this movement. And having these four horsewomen in our showcase was huge for us. And so we have some amazing spots, highlighting some of their best matches, and having to go dig through our archives and find the reference material to make sure that we're accurate as possible. It's a challenge, but it's something that we all are very passionate about.
And I gotta say, you guys have made history because we have Becky Lynch on the cover. She's the first female athlete in the cover of a WWE 2K game. I mean, you guys are making history, man. That has to feel pretty sweet.
Oh, yeah. No, I have a daughter, right? And so it's great to be a part of history, like you're saying, and pave the way for the next generation, right? And just, I'm all about, like, making sure we're a positive influence to our fan base and people coming up, and having a woman on the cover speaks volumes to me, right? Once you see that, anything is possible, right? It's no longer something that's not that's not achievable anymore. Now this is going to become the norm and become something that you feel like you can attain if if this is your path that you want to head down, right?
Has there been something like a mode or something that you've been wanting to add in like a previous versions of these games that you were able to add to WWE 2K20?
I would say, like, not necessarily a mode, but like having a female in my career, like, that was huge, right? And doing it in a way where it didn't sacrifice having a male in my career as well, right? Because some people want to play as both, right? I think most people do, right? And so we did it in a very creative way where you have these two best friends that are coming through, coming of age from high school to, the NXT, to the Indies, whatever, to the WWE and the Hall of Fame. And it's an emotional story. It's not just, like, hey, here's two people coming up and they're in NXT and they're in the WWE. It's like, no, there's twists and turns. There's, like I said, there's hell, right? Like it's not just a best friend. It's not just a story about like two people. It's a story about like two people who go through ups and downs together, get on each other's nerves or have each other's back and then kind of fall out and then come back together, right? Like, it's a real story, right? There's times where I'm like in my office, I'm on the verge of tears. I'm like, oh my God, this is so amazing. Like Sean Conaway, our writer, did an amazing job with the story. He's here. You should talk to him. I'm curious on how he tapped into that other side because he's a dude, right? And so like he really nailed down like, that emotional aspect of a man and a woman who are just friends and coming up in this industry together.
Awesome. And for those people that maybe, are no longer interested in wrestling games or maybe fell out of, following the franchise, the 2K franchise, like, a message for them, like, why should they play WWE 2K20 this time around? They should not miss this game. But why, though?
Why shouldn't they, right? Like, I mean, you look at everything we added to this year's game, if you're not a fan of wrestling, but you like fighting games, if you like just crazy wacky things like what we're doing with the Bump of the Night. You see a Frankenstrowman coming up off of like a table and walking out, and you have zombies. We have other DLC that's coming. that are on that same level as of creativity and polish, right? Where we're like, if you're into, say, sci-fi or something else or retro, we have something for you, right? Like, and if you look at like what the current market is doing as far as like just allowing developers to be creative again, right? And yes, it's a sim, but at the same time, that doesn't mean we can't be fun. And it doesn't mean that we can't be creative. And that's what we're doing. Now that, like, again, we have the keys to the car. We're driving, right?
I saw, like, there's a hell stage, like there's a set there's like a filming set, like you guys got really creative this time around. And as a gamer, I really appreciate that because, yeah, as you said, it's a simulation, but it's also a game. And, you know, I really appreciate the variety in, you know, the stages that you guys brought up and all that stuff. So myself am really looking forward to the release of WWE 2K20. Thank you so much, Lynell.
Thank you.
Peace out, man. Take care.